Hello, my name is Tony Biancarosa, and welcome to the Dynasty Fuel for Growth video series. Here we will discuss and dig into the expertise, focus, execution, and commitment it takes to specialize and grow your business. I'm fortunate today to be joined by Miguel Sosa, the founding principal of Premier Global Advisors. Welcome, Miguel.
Hi, John. Good to be here.
And this interview today, just for everybody watching and listening, we're going to be focusing on the international clients, which is an area of special expertise for Miguel. So without further ado, we'll launch into things and start with how you got started in the business. What attracted you to financial services and what got you going?
Well, I started in the business in 1982. For many on this call, they will have not remember what 1982 was all about, or certainly weren't involved with business. But 1982, I had left the Air Force about a year before, and I needed a job. In 1982, Ronald Reagan was president, and we were having probably one of the highest degrees of inflation and unemployment in the United States, real unemployment, not COVID unemployment. There was no government money, there was nobody sending you checks, and the unemployment was very, very high. So basically, I was graduating from the university after completing a year that I needed after the Air Force. And I had, in those days, people would come in, not really recruiters, but people would come in from firms to talk about what their firm was about with the idea of hiring people. But there weren't too many people hiring people when you have 10% unemployment. And yet, when they showed up, I went up to the guy that was speaking. It was this company I'd never heard of called Merrill Lynch. And the guy said, I went up to the guy and I said, listen, I need a job. And the guy very nonchalantly, but very nicely, diplomatically said, well, here's my business card, call my office, and they'll send you an application, you fill it out, and we'll see where it goes. I said, well, thank you very much. Having gone through these before, I figured, I was in the same dance that I was with the other ones. So, but I did go ahead and apply. And so long story short, they looked at my resume, something appealed to them, maybe my Air Force background, I don't know. And so they called me in those days, they did what is called simulation. Simulation was that you would walk in and they'd give you a time frame, maybe 2 or 3 hours, where they would simulate what you would do in a real-time job, and then they'd evaluate you and then determine whether you were a candidate for the work or not. I apparently passed that one. I don't know how. And then lastly, I had an interview with the office manager, who was not the person I had originally spoken to. And he asked me for about 3 hours worth of my time and did a whole kind of historical analysis on my life, which is rather interesting because nobody had ever done that, including myself. And so at the end of the day, they took a risk and hired me. And again, I did not know what Merrill Lynch was because I come from a very humble, poor background. And so money was always spent. It was never saved. But anyway, long story short, that's how I started with Merrill Lynch. And I was given the opportunity with a phone and a phone book and a desk, and off we went.
Well, I appreciate you sharing the story. And before I forget my manners, thank you very much for your service in our armed services. So thank you, sir, for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And to build on that a little bit, so you focus now on international clients. Can you give me a little bit more insight? What led you to focus on that particular marketplace and those folks?
Sure. So again, 1982, early 80s, the U.S. was mecca for money coming into our country. Latin America was in disarray. People are fleeing those countries both financially and physically, especially Venezuela. The first wave we got were Venezuelans leaving Venezuela during those times. But the Venezuelans came with a lot of money, and because it was the oil boom that was helping them become rich, but a poor government that was kicking them out of the country. Anyway, long story short, I was bilingual. And that was a tool in and of itself, being able to speak Spanish, and an environment was mostly Anglos and people that had been in country clubs and enjoyed life, very cushy, they were called stockbrokers. By the time I got into the business, we were called account executives, still being a stockbroker. Anyway, long story was that it was a natural for a Spanish speaking person in Miami that was in the financial services to become a specialist in non-US business. So, I took that and ran, and there were no restrictions on approaching people any part of the world. So I would literally sit there with my Apple II, which was one of the first computers that was available in the world, and actually draft with a little dot matrix printer. I would type up letters offering our services, mail them to bizarre places like Quito, Ecuador, and Bogota, Colombia, and Maracaibo, Venezuela, and offer our services. And lo and behold, people actually paid attention to those letters. They thought they were like God communicating with them. And slowly but surely open accounts, and that's how we build our business, or I build my business in international.
Well, with all those different countries, you mentioned Venezuela, you mentioned Colombia, you mentioned Ecuador, and all those different governments and economies. How do you stay relevant and on top of what's going on so many different moving parts?
Well, I mean, keep in mind that as an international financial advisor, you're still a U.S.-based international advisor. So your first and foremost knowledge has to be U.S.-based. You need to understand what the requirements are for establishing a relationship with somebody from a foreign country, what the implications would be, what the due diligence process is for onboarding them, where their backgrounds, how to find out about their backgrounds. Are they a referral? Are they somebody that's coming to you fresh from a different source, et cetera? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that, we're not experts at giving tax advice or estate advice for people in those countries for those countries. And I don't do that. It's not part of my strength, or I've ever even pursued it. But I have to know enough to be able to guide the client to understand what the implications are of a taxable gain, a long-term gain, a short-term gain, whether it's an income, whether that income's derived from interest or dividend. And more in today's world, more importantly than most of those things, is estate taxes, the tax on what happens to that money when that person dies. Does it go directly to somebody else, or does it go directly to the IRS? So those are the elements of our knowledge that are important. So it's a balancing act between understanding what is the implications of the income and the activity of the account relative to where they live, but also more importantly, what is it? How is it affected by U.S. regulations?
And you bring up a great point about the regulations you have to be on top of. Are there any particular partners that you utilize or resources you utilize to keep you in tune with all that?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of ways you do that. First of all, pre-pandemic, there are conferences that you go to that are geared towards working with international clients. And normally they're not called that. They're not called, this is the International Client Conference. There's something else, and then there's a group of sessions that are maybe geared towards international clients. So you take advantage of those, you try to pick up, you try to learn. I try to go to a lot of lawyer sponsored meetings, as well as accountant sponsored meetings, because they're dealing, especially here in South Florida, with those clients. So it gets really technical sometimes and really out of my scope of knowledge, but the fact that I'm interconnecting with them and understanding what some of the issues may be or could be in the future helps me become a better advisor. And then lastly, a network of people that I've developed over the years, accountants, attorneys, estate attorneys, immigration attorneys, foreign attorneys and foreign locations. So if I have a question about something that has to do with an Ecuadorian client, I have a network of Ecuadorian accountants and attorneys that I ask for help on. So, that's kind of, how that comes to be by virtue of the relationships that we have established with other professionals.
With everything going on and the amount of time you spend in the industry and building this business of yours, I have to imagine there have been a number of distractions. What would you say is probably the biggest distraction to you continuing to stay focused, and how do you deal with it?
I've never been asked that question. Distraction. I think the biggest distraction is myself. Is not staying focused on what I need to be doing all the time. Maybe losing my focus or something. But distractions, I don't have any distractions to speak of.
Okay, I can appreciate that. And with the idea of diverting your focus, is there a special tool or technique that you might use to re-snap your focus to where it's supposed to be?
Yeah, my bank account usually refocuses my attention really quick. No, I think that clients are our best refocusing mechanism. And I say that because if you're truly in a position of fiduciary advice, that means you're a fiduciary. That means that you are responsible and you have to do things the right way. And if you do things the right way, no matter what the markets are doing, people appreciate it. They appreciate it and they tell you they appreciate it. And so the reality is that those conversations are the ones that keep me focused. I don't think they refocus me. I think they keep me focused on what I should be doing. A conversation with a client about their family, a conversation with a client about an illness, a conversation with a client about a disabled child. Those are the things that keep me going, is to know that somehow in a very unique way, I'm able to help somebody go through certain parts of their life, positive or negative, either way, and be a part of it somehow. So I think clients are the ones that keep me focused the most, because I'm always trying to make sure that, we're providing them with the best advice and best guidance we can. And that comes across in the communications we have with them, and their appreciation, and that standard of appreciation is something that's what I thrive on day in and day out.
I can imagine they have to be highly appreciative of the service you offer, especially with all the, shall we call it, noise out there from all different sources, be it internet or media. So not surprised or thankful. When you look back on things, and if you were to look back at yourself starting when you did back in 1982, almost, I won't count the years, but I guess closing 38. In on almost three decades there, yeah.
Almost 4 decades.
Yeah. Is there any advice you'd give to somebody as you look back, saying, what would you have told yourself back then that you wish you knew then when you were starting out?
Yeah, I think about that all the time. I think, and this is the advice I give my kids. So it's the same advice I give people who are asking me, hey, how should I approach this business? What should I do, et cetera. I would say the bits of advice that I would give my kids, which I have given them, is study in the best university you can possibly study that provides an education along the lines of what you're looking to do with life. And that implies that you have to have had an identification of what you want to do in life. So that's the first and foremost. But assuming that you have a inclination or a desire to be in the world of wealth management, then try to find a good university. It doesn't have to be the best, but find a good university to get a good education. And then to me, the key is spend 5 to 8 years working under the best possible tutorage you can get. Internship, team, successful team, a place where you really are just learning and learning and learning and understanding and learning throughout. And then 5 or 8 years later, become independent. Just go on your own and just try to be the best you can be, as successful as you can be on your own. Once you become successful on your own, then you can eventually join a team or become a partner of somebody, because teams are only as good as their individual members are combined. And if you are a strong person with a successful background, you can join any team, because you already have the self-worth and the strength and the confidence in yourself that you can do it on your own. So by joining a team or becoming part of a bigger firm, then you have that, that internal worth that will allow you to be successful, because at the end of the day, you are successful on your own 2 feet.
Thank you for that. And you mentioned the team, and you started out yourself, sole practitioner, now have built this wonderful team. How do you go about developing your team members to make sure everything is going in the right direction as you foresee the vision for Premia?
The success of any relationship, whether it's a team, a marriage, a parental relationship, is communication. That's the number one, that's the essence of it all, is making sure that when you are dealing with other people, they know what you're doing, where you're headed, and what you're all about. So active communication, and it has to be both ways. It's not just, unilateral, me communicating. It's both, having an open dialogue, is speaking with people, is understanding what they're thinking, what they're worried about, what their concerns are, and then for them to understand that you've understood them and what is that you're going to do about it. And that means, in a team like mine, which is a vertical team, and I've been both in horizontal and in vertical teams, but in a vertical team, I have to spend the time to listen to my team members, understand what their concerns are, where can we improve, what ideas do they have, how can we do something better, quicker, faster, cheaper, whatever it is. So communications is the essence to everything. And active communication is just going to make sure that, you are successful.
And I find it very interesting. You mentioned being both in a horizontal and a vertical team. I wonder if I might ask you, what led you down the decision path to make your team vertical?
Oh, that's I'm a victim of circumstance. So the reason Premia is the way it is right now is because back in July of 15, Merrill Lynch decided that it was not going to continue to do business in many countries throughout the world. And it would have affected me to the tune of having to give up about 70% of my business in that process. And so getting back to some of the questions you asked earlier, I feel first and foremost a commitment to my clients. Secondly, a commitment to a firm like Merrill Lynch. And so especially when they take that level of attitude, that just shows me that there's no regard for the client. It's a regard for the firm and profit, so to speak. So, at that point in time, I looked for other options. Fortunately, I ran into Dynasty, which has become a great partner. And I have the ability to go on my own and rebuild the business that I had when I was at Merrill Lynch. So I went from a horizontal team at Merrill Lynch, where we were 3 partners managing about 1.2 billion, to being Premia, which is 1 partner managing about 250 million, and doing it with all the joy and happiness and pride that one can have.
To round things out, it seems like if somebody was a client of yours, that they would have maybe a couple different words as to how you do makes an impact, or what it is they value most from you. What do you see that being from the different clients that you represent and help? The big value that you add, and what's top of mind for them as to why Premia, why Miguel?
Yeah, I think 2 things come to mind, which is what I aspire my clients to say about me. is I fully trust him. You know, I trust everything he does. I trust everything he says, and he's super reliable. Meaning that, you know, if I commit to something and I tell you I'm going to do something, I either do it or I tell you why I'm not doing it way ahead of time, not after the fact. So, you know, that's my hallmark, is to be, you know, as trustworthy as possible. It's a day in and day out exercise. It has to be earned. And I do that by the reliability of my word and my commitment to my client. So being able to have them say, you know, Miguel says he's going to do something, boy, you can stand in that corner at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and he's going to show up no matter what the weather looks like. And that's exactly what I deliver to my clients. Of course, there's expertise and knowledge and, you know, experience and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, those are almost given in our business. You know, I mean, if I'm competing for business at this stage of my career, you have to assume the person's got expertise, knowledge, and knows what he's doing. So that's kind of a given. But, you know, the more intangible aspects of the relationship are the fact that, you know, my clients just trust me. You know, my reviews of my clients are a way for me to reconnect and connect with them. But most of the time, you know, they're saying, Miguel, you know, I know we're having this review, but I really, you know, there's no need for this. You know, I trust you 100%. But, you know, it's a fiduciary responsibility that I keep, and they know and they expect it, and it's part of the process.
And then as a final question, a lot going on in the world right now, and with everything around the pandemic and everything else. But when you think about what's going on in the world and what you're trying to achieve with Premia, what keeps you going? What keeps you focused and energized and driving forward and growing this business?
Again, it all boils down to my clients. It's the fact that we have a platform that is very unique in the sense that we manage right now about 35 individual relationships with 250 million. So, you know, we are very, very boutique-ish, if you will, on the types of business that we do, for whom we do it for. And we have achieved the level of efficiency in our business to be able to leverage it many times more than we're doing right now. So what keeps me going is the desire and the expectation and the drive to grow the business, to maximize what we're doing, maximize our talents and the capabilities, and use, you know, 38 years of experience and knowledge in the international business to help international clients do the right thing, because many of them are walking around not doing the right thing. And being able to get the word out and share with people, hey, listen, you know, we have a platform, we have a capability, we have expertise to help you make the right decisions. That's what keeps me going every single day.
Well, I appreciate the candor and the openness that you've done during this interview very much, Miguel, and wish you nothing but continued success. And want to say again, very much thank you, Miguel Sosa, founding partner of Premia Global Advisors, and thank you all for tuning in. And that'll conclude this session.